Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The morning of Isabella's wedding, I stood before the mirror in a simple black suit. Pressed, clean, but not designer. The tuxedo rental place called late last night. A mix-up, no tux left in my size. I could have begged, bought, borrowed. But I didn't. Because this wasn't about what I wore. It was about who I'd become. I arrived at the Langford estate just after 4 in the afternoon. My jacket collar slightly wrinkled from the cab ride, my shoes dusty from the gravel. I didn't belong here, and I knew it the second I stepped through the wrought iron gate. Crystal chandeliers dangled above a courtyard paved with imported marble. Every guest shimmered in satin or silk, their smiles perfectly angled, their wine glasses clinking in slow rhythm. A string quartet played something elegant, something I couldn't name. I was the only one without a tuxedo. I just crossed the fountain when a voice, sharp and scornful, split through the classical music. Who let the staff into the ceremony space? I turned and saw Arthur Langford, Isabella's soon-to-be father-in-law, glaring straight at me. He didn't recognize me. Not at first. He was too focused on my shoes. "Go put on a tuxedo for decency," he snapped, his eyes flicking over my suit like it was something scraped off the floor. "You're embarrassing the family." I straightened slowly. "I'm not the staff." "Oh." He arched a brow, stepping closer. "Then who are you?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted to see how long it would take him to realize. But he didn't. Instead, he glanced past me toward a group of waiters carrying shrimp cocktails. I held his gaze. "I'm Henry, Isabella's brother." There was a beat, a long silent beat, before something flickered in his expression. Surprise. Then something sharper. Displeasure. "You're him," he muttered, as if I were a ghost that had walked in uninvited. "I was invited," I said calmly. "And I came. For her." Arthur looked at me like I was a spilled glass of wine on his Persian rug. "Couldn't even wear a proper tux," he murmured, almost to himself. Then louder, "We have a reputation to uphold, Mr. Collins. Optics matter." "No," I said. "Character matters." His lips twitch. "You'll learn, eventually, that in our world, perception is character." He turned before I could reply, disappearing into a cloud of cigar smoke and entitlement. The music swelled. Someone toasted champagne. I stood motionless for a moment, fists clenched, heart thudding. Not in anger, but in clarity. As I stepped into the glassy hall where chandeliers glittered like false stars, heads turned. Not admiring, assessing. The groom's father, Arthur Langford, spotted me and raised an eyebrow. Then he leaned toward his wife and whispered. I saw it. I felt it. When I reached the inner circle, he didn't wait. "Do you mind?" he snapped, gesturing at my attire. "This isn't a gas station. At least try to look like someone worthy of standing beside my family." Isabella appeared at my side. "Arthur," she said coldly, "Henry's the reason I'm standing here at all. If anyone deserves respect today, it's him." He fell silent, lips tight, but the damage was done. As I walked her down the aisle, every step echoed a memory. Scrubbing floors, skipped meals, nights coating through tears. I didn't need a tuxedo. My scars were stitched with love, not silk. It wasn't always this way. There was once a time when we had a family, until the day everything collapsed. And Arthur Langford had no idea who he had just insulted. It happened 12.5 years ago. The knock came during breakfast. I was 19. Isabella was still in her pajamas, face sticky with jam, giggling over her cereal. I opened the door to 2 uniformed officers and a question I still hear in my nightmares. "Are you Henry Collins?" I nodded, suddenly cold. "There's been an accident," one of them said. "Your parents." I'm afraid they didn't make it. Time splintered. The officers spoke of a truck, a highway turn, twisted metal. My knees gave out. Isabella dropped her spoon. "Where's Mommy and Dad?" she asked. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her small breaths from the floor mattress beside mine. In the silence, I discovered the rest. Our father had debts, serious ones. Loan sharks, unpaid taxes. The house wasn't ours anymore. Within a month, everything was gone. I remember holding Isabella's tiny hand as we walked out of our childhood home for the last time. "Where are we going?" she whispered. I swallowed my fear and lied, "Someplace better." But there was no better. There was only me and her, and a storm I vowed to fight with both fists. That was the day I stopped being a brother and became a shield. Since then, a whole 10 years have passed in the struggle to exist and build a better life. I learned to sleep in 5-hour shifts and survive on burnt coffee and obligation. By day, I worked 2 jobs, warehouse loading at dawn and data entry till nightfall. By night, I studied. The apartment was a shoebox with cracked paint and a heater that coughed like a dying animal. But Isabella had a warm bed, clean meals, and tuition receipts that didn't bounce. "You never go out," she said once, peeking into the kitchen as I hunched over a textbook. "Eyes like sandpaper. You're always working." I shrugged. "It's only temporary." "You said that 2 years ago." I looked up. Her face reminded me of Mom when she was young, hopeful, tired, but kind. "Temporaries last longer when you're broke." She didn't laugh. Instead, she stepped closer. "Henry, why do you never talk about what you want?" I didn't answer. Because if I opened that door, I might not close it again. What I didn't tell her was that behind all my effort was a ghost, our father. His name still rang through business circles like a bell with a cracked edge. Every time I tried to rise, someone would bring it up. "Aren't you Frederick Collins' son? The one woe?" Yes, that one. At one job interview, the CEO recognized my last name and smiled thinly. Impressive resume. But the baggage, it's heavy. That night, I tore the nameplate off my desk. I decided I would make something without the shadow of my last name. Something that couldn't be ignored. Something bigger than him. And so, by candlelight and grit, I began scribbling code into a used laptop. A prototype. An idea. Artificial intelligence. I didn't know then it would grow into a revolution. All I knew was I had to build something no one could take away from her, or me. I co-founded a mega project to bring artificial intelligence into the tech world while still working full-time. The beginning was brutal. Late nights, rejected proposals, code that broke more than it worked. But after we launched a key feature, it exploded. We became indispensable. Still, I stayed in the shadows. Fame wasn't my goal. Stability for Isabella was. Then came Isabella engagement. I smiled, nodded, played the proud brother. Until I learned who her fiance's father was, Arthur Langford, a man who'd been trying for months to acquire our startup like it was just another prize for his shelf. I felt the irony crush my chest, but I told myself to judge the groom, not the father. 2 days later, I was sitting in a coffee shop enjoying a coffee and croissant. A man came up to me and said, "Mr. Langford would like a word, urgently." He was waiting for me on a bench in the park, posture suddenly respectful, no trace of the sneer from earlier. "Henry," he began, smoothing his cufflinks. "It seems I underestimated you. I just found out you're one of the architects behind the Centaur AI platform." I said nothing. Let him sweat. Arthur continued, "Our firm has been attempting to acquire it for months. I believe we can offer you a generous figure, 7 zeros. More if you're willing to license full rights." I smiled faintly. "So now the beggar suit isn't so offensive, is it?" He flushed. "Business is business, Mr. Collins." I stepped closer, eye level. "You insulted me on my sister's wedding day. You judged my worth by thread count. And now you want to own what I built in silence?" He cleared his throat. "Henry, let's not make this personal." "It is personal," I said, "because you looked at me and saw nothing. But I am everything you failed to see. Loyal, resilient, dangerous when cornered." I pulled the envelope from my coat. "This is the signed deal with your competitor. As of this morning, Centaur belongs to Virion Tech." His eyes widened. You sold it to Virion?" "I refuse to wear your tuxedo," I whispered, "and now I refuse to wear your chain." I turned and walked back to the cafe, where Isabella was laughing with her new husband. Sometimes the best revenge isn't rage, it's refusal, and I had just become an expert at it.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.